Good morning. It's game day. The 49ers might be playing obnoxiously late, but that's okay. 7 p.m. kickoff tonight against the Chargers. Final preseason game. Training camp is in the books. Roster cut down is on Tuesday. So we're going to do a 49ers Chargers preview discussion within the context of the 53-man roster, which is available for you right here. I know most of you, many of you, a good number of you have been following along throughout the course of the preseason. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste, and you can check your chat sections right now to be able to follow along as we go along. The roster before the game tonight. So tonight, just to set the ground rules, it's going to be a dress rehearsal for the 49ers. They've been game planning for the Chargers. They're excited that the Chargers present a 3-4 front, which is what Pittsburgh runs. That obviously is the 49ers' season opening opponent. They travel to face the Steelers in a game on September 10th. That's still a little bit over 2 weeks away, though. First, the 49ers will focus on ironing out any potential kinks tonight against the Chargers, and then they'll turn to the 53-man roster cut down. Might be a bonus practice or two over the course of Labor Day weekend, and then the preparations for Pittsburgh will begin in earnest. So that's the timeline moving forward. Right now, we are zeroed in on Tuesday, the 53-man roster cut down. Nearly 1,200 players across the league are going to get pink slips by Tuesday. 37 players per team, right? You're cutting down from 90 to 53. That's 37 per team that have to be cut. Obviously, you're bringing back about half of those, but maybe you're not bringing back only your guys for the practice squad. That's 16-player practice squad. So not everyone's going to be unemployed, but a lot of players are going to be looking for work. It obviously is one of the more cataclysmic NFL times of the year when you have to cut down from 90 to 53. So the 49ers are no different than other teams. They're going to have to find a way to cut from 90 to 53 and then build a 16-man practice squad. And in the process of doing that, they're going to have to make sure that they're under the salary cap as well. And that's, a whole issue that's related to Nick Bosa's expected contract and continued holdout that the 49ers are getting a little bit more antsy over. I think you could tell that John Lynch has ratcheted up the intensity, at least according to his interview yesterday with KMBR. He mentioned that this has never been the case for the 49ers. They've never had a holdout last this long. So they want to get Nick Bosa back in the building. They want to get that contract set, because what the contract will do is that it will save cap space for the 49ers in 2023 and allow them to more freely construct a 53-man roster that they really, really want. Now, they don't need Nick Bosa to sign before Tuesday. They don't need to trade Trey Lance before signing Nick Bosa. All of these things, signing Nick Bosa, trading Trey Lance, those things would save money for the 49ers. They have enough to operate, but I think that they want to foster as much flexibility as possible under the cap, especially considering 2024. So that's why they want to get all these things done, because the more flexibility you have, the better position you're in to be able to potentially execute in-season spending. Last year, they traded for Christian McCaffrey. One of the reasons they were able to trade for Christian McCaffrey is because he didn't have a very high cap hit in 2023. But the 49ers were probably precluded from trading for other players in 2023. I'm not saying they wanted to trade for other players, but say that somebody like Christian McCaffrey showed up, but he had a higher cap hit, the 49ers wouldn't have been able to fit him in. Well, this year, they would like to be able to fit in a potential trade if that's what they need to push all the chips to the middle of the table and enhance this 53-man roster. So that means that signing Bosa, maybe trading Lance, freeing up some money, all of those things can help. I have said, though, that the 49ers want to make sure they keep this roster as strong as possible now, which is why a Trey Lance trade seems unlikely. I think that Ian Rappaport said the 49ers have been making some phone calls regarding Trey Lance, but they're not getting all that much interest right now, which, again, is exactly what we predicted when we talked about the potential future for Trey Lance. The near future for Trey is that he's expected to play tonight. but not until after Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold. So when you talk about the dress rehearsal, you're going to see Purdy and the ones, and I'm highlighting the ones, on the field first. Does that include Trent Williams? We're not sure. Maybe not. Does that include George Kittle? Well, he's back from injury now, so we can probably reset his cell and take away the red coloring for injury. But I'm not sure if he's actually going to play tonight. I do think that there is some value in building up Callis through actual gameplay, even if it is a few snaps just to get used to the speed of the game. So maybe the 49ers will adopt that line of thinking for guys like Kittle, for guys like Williams, and maybe even for Christian McCaffrey. Maybe we see all of the starters tonight. And hey, Drake Jackson is back too, so we can also reset the cell for Drake Jackson. Dre Greenlaw, Oren Burks, probably don't see either of those two players tonight, especially Burks, who's going to be out for the rest of the preseason. But the starters, it's going to be their time for the 49ers, and I would say about 20 to 25 snaps based on the information that I've collected for the starters. Beyond that, obviously the starters are going to make the 53-man roster. Beyond that, we're going to see some roster battles today. So you talk about the quarterback position. You go on to Sam Darnold. He's secured quarterback too, but he'll probably be QB presiding over players who are still fighting for roster spots. Not everybody, but some players. Let's take a look at some of the potential players who will be fighting for roster spots while Sam Darnold is in the game. Second team offensive line, somebody like Nick Zakelj, who has a chance to make the 53. I just don't know how the numbers are going to work, and I think the 49ers might be trying to sneak him onto the practice squad, just like Jason Poe, just like Leroy Watson. Those guys might be in the game when Sam Darnold's in the game. I think they'll certainly be in the game when Trey Lance is scheduled to be in the game. Somebody like Il Manning, essentially a 49ers third team left tackle right now, but they view him as a guard in the future. He's going to be playing while Sam Darnold and Trey Lance are playing. And then how much time does Brandon Allen get? Probably just mop-up duty for the 49ers. But it's all going to be relevant, and it's all going to be interesting within the larger scheme of how this is going to work. So I'm going to go through this position by position. When we do that, then we can say, hey, this is what this guy needs to show. This is what the 49ers might do. We can take a very analytical approach at what the 49ers roster situation is entering this final preseason game. Position by position means that we put this back up on the screen. I already talked about QBs, so we can move on from them. If you want to revisit that, save some good questions for later. Running back. Do we see McCaffrey tonight? Well, I don't think it really matters. I think he's going to be ready regardless for the regular season. Maybe we see a little bit of Elijah Mitchell, who's back out on the field and healthy. Ty Davis-Price, yes, I get it. There will be focus on his pass protection. See how he does in the game today. Jordan Mason, I thought, ran really well this week. Was part of that fight against Diamond Lenore at practice. And then the 49ers brought in Jeremy McNichols and Brian Hill, who's been getting quite a bit of work to take them to the finish line this training camp and preseason. But, what's interesting is that both of these guys, McNichols and Hill, are going to be fighting for practice squad spots, assuming nobody gets hurt right up here. Because we know that Shanahan has liked to take 5 running backs in the past, which means that if everybody here is healthy, McNichols and Hill are going to be on the outside looking in. But it's a valuable position to be in, the 49ers practice squad as a running back, because yes, they have a high injury rate at the position, but also, yes, they have a lot of opportunity at the position. If you do get called up for the practice squad to be a 49ers running back, you might have a chance to rip off a big game out of nowhere, depending on where the injuries are, depending on what role they need. But we know that the 49ers are chock full of weapons offensively, and we know that they scheme a prolific rushing attack. So McNichols and Hill fighting for a practice squad spot in all likelihood in the 49ers running back room. Jack Coletto is an interesting player. He scored the touchdown last week. He's a fullback. He obviously played a ton of positions at Oregon State. We'll see if he's the heir apparent to Kyle Juszczyk. And I do think he's on a good track to be that for the 49ers. You look at Coletto and you look at interest from the rest of the league. The Denver Broncos, Sean Payton really wanted Jack Coletto. It was maybe a little bit of a bidding war with the 49ers, who ended up giving Coletto the bigger signing bonus in undrafted free agency. That has made some people think that there might be a risk if the 49ers waive Jack Coletto and then try to re-sign him to their practice squad. There might be a risk that he is claimed off of waivers by another team. I will couch that fear by saying that another team would have to fit Jack Coletto on their 53-man roster. There's a difference between interest in a player in undrafted free agency and the willingness to actually claim a player off waivers at the 53-man cut down. Because you have a whole lot more room in the offseason, right after the draft. You have 90 roster spots. So it's not that big of a deal to give any guy, a $150,000 signing bonus to lure him to join one of your 90 roster spots. But at the roster cut down, it gets a whole lot more cramped and a whole lot more serious. Every single team is having to cut 37 players. And if you're going to bring in somebody else claiming him off waivers, you're going to have to cut 38 players. You have to make extra room. So in more crowded situations, it's less likely that another team is able to poach one of your waiver players. For that reason, I do think that the 49ers ultimately waive Jack Coletto right up here. Because if they waive Jack Coletto, they're probably going to be able to get him back to the practice squad. The alternative is, if you don't want to risk exposing him to waivers, is keeping him on the roster, and that would mean you keep 6 running backs and fullbacks. It's not unheard of. Last year, the 49ers carried 6, but about a day or two after the cut down, they let Trey Sermon go. So for all intents and purposes, they only carried 5 in the running back room. So I would think that Coletto is on his way to the 49ers practice squad, but it's going to be fun to watch him today. And that being said, if the 49ers think it's a big risk that he gets picked up, maybe they don't showcase him all too much. But Jack Coletto has been a bright spot for the 49ers. He's technically executed a lot of the difficult blocks that the team asks Kyle Juszczyk, its fullback, to execute. He is a Swiss Army knife, which is exactly what Kyle Juszczyk does for the 49ers. And he scored a nice touchdown for the 49ers against the Denver Broncos. So that's where Jack Coletto is right now. I know that the 49ers like him, and I know that they would like to be able to clear him onto the practice squad. But I also realize that nothing is fully guaranteed. And this was an intriguing prospect who played like 5 different positions coming out of Oregon State. And I think that he caught the attention of many different teams. All right, let's move on to the receiver room. The receiver room is interesting because Gray and McLeod, as you can see here, are both hurt. The 49ers, keep in mind, they only have 8 return from IR designations to use over the course of the regular season. They actually ran out of return from IR designations last year, and they took some criticism because they had used up one of those on the reserve linebacker, Curtis Robinson, earlier in the season. So since you only have 8, you probably want to use these sparingly, especially since the 49ers might have learned a lesson in 2022. Since Gray and McLeod might both be back before week 4 of the regular season, and it's a minimum 4-week stint on IR, I don't think they want to use an IR spot on either of these two guys. Even if you did use an IR spot on these two guys, then you would have to still put them on the initial 53-man roster before designating them to injured reserve so they can actually return this year. My point is that Gray and McLeod are going to make the 53 unless we have a surprise cut. Unless the 49ers say, nope, Danny Gray, we're going to cut you. We like Tay Martin. We like Chris Conley. We like Willie Snead better. Hell, even Anthony Miller, who just showed up, could be somebody the 49ers like for depth purposes. So Ray McLeod is obviously making the team. Danny Gray, very likely making the football team. But we should always be ready for a late August surprise when it comes to some of these cuts. I think Ronnie Bell's on the inside of this picture. He's got a lot of things to clean up, especially in the drop game. He's dropped a couple passes that have been very costly to the 49ers, but Ronnie Bell has flashed so much playmaking ability that I don't think you'd be able to pass him through waivers if you're the 49ers at this point. I do think they're going to be robust in the practice squad at the receiver position just because you've got 2 guys hurt right now. And with the practice squad, you can elevate players on a week-by-week basis. You can bridge the gap of these injuries and this unavailability early in the season if you do have Tay Martin at your disposal on the practice squad, if you do have Chris Conley there, who's had a good camp, if you do have Willie Snead there, who's had a good camp. So I think the 49ers crossed the bridge, and the problems presented by the logjam at the receiver room by really loading up in the practice squad. So keep an eye on all these players tonight against Denver. You're going to see a lot of run for guys like Martin, for guys like Conley, for Snead. Ronnie Bell, too. I mean, he needs more run so he could develop better pass catching skills in these games. And don't forget about Anthony Miller. It's going to be his 49ers game day debut. He's made a couple catches in practice. I mean, former receiver with electric potential coming out of college. And he had a couple big years in 2019 and 2020 for the Chicago Bears, 50 catches apiece, right around there. So the 49ers might still be able to witness a career rejuvenation from somebody like Anthony Miller. If that happens, it might have to start tonight so that he makes the team, or at least the 49ers extend a practice squad spot to him. So wide receiver room, it's all about the depth. The 49ers have showcased a lot of it this offseason, and now they will have their final preseason chance to shine against the Chargers. What's next? Tight end. All right, so if Cam Latu delivers for the 49ers with his hands again, I mean, he had a decent game with his hands, much better than it had been before against the Broncos. I think Latu makes the team. If that's the case, then he'll have shown an upward trajectory with the pass catching skills. It looked like he was swimming earlier in training camp. Maybe things are slowing down for Cam Latu. They love his size and his blocking ability. So as a third-round pick, if he is on a steady upward ascent at the end of camp, you can expect Cam Latu to make the team. Then it's a question of, do they carry 3 or 4 tight ends? And, you know, I think Braden Willis has shown enough to be around on the practice squad. I don't have the 49ers carrying Charlie Werner because Ross Dwelly is making $700,000 guaranteed. And it's a crowded roster. Can you take 4 tight ends? In the past, they have. I'll acknowledge that. Cutting Werner and re-signing him to the practice squad would be cheaper than cutting Dwelly and re-signing him into the practice squad, since Dwelly has that $700,000 guaranteed. I think that when you look at how this is all set up and you look at the big picture, the 49ers will need to pull practice squatters up at tight end if they carry Cam Latu, because Latu might still be too raw to perform immediately on Sundays. But assuming, and Charlie Werner only has like a $45,000 dead money situation. He's in the final year of his rookie contract. So Charlie Werner is somebody who I do think you can afford to cut and probably pass through waivers so you can be on the practice squad. He would be above Cameron Latu on the pecking order right now as far as play time on Sunday. But due to financial reasons, due to draft reasons, Latu would technically be on the 53-man roster while Werner wouldn't be. Troy Fumagalli is also a good player to watch for the practice squad. I just don't know how much room in those 16 spots the 49ers are going to have. But Fumagalli is a very steady veteran who actually delivered some reliable play for the 49ers this offseason. So look at the back of that tight end room today. And I'm curious to see if George Kittle plays a little bit. Wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. Offensive line. I got to put Leroy Watson on the practice squad. Because Leroy Watson has shown some good developmental ability for the 49ers, but I don't think he's going to make the 53. He's still allowing a little too much pressure. It's good feet. I mean, you'd expect Leroy Watson to have good feet. He was a tight end just a year ago, a little bit more than that. 49ers picked him up about a year ago on Labor Day weekend. So this has been the first camp with Leroy Watson. Keep an eye on him during this game. Seriously, he's going to have a lot of time to show that he's still growing at that tackle position. So Leroy Watson out on the outside. I don't like where the 49ers are with swing tackle. You have Chris Foerster openly talking about Jalen Moore needing to show them more. You have Matt Pryor only comfortable playing on the right side. I mean, it's a situation right now where that's inefficient for the roster. If you have to carry Moore to be your left tackle, backup and carry Pryor to be your right tackle backup instead of just having one swing tackle, you're burning a roster spot. So I'm not 100% sure if the 49ers have their swing tackle on this roster. This might be where the Trey Lance potential trade comes in. Get a swing tackle somehow. Because if you could find a way to consolidate from Moore and Pryor to just one offensive swing tackle, then you'll have room to carry somebody else on the roster, right? And that's what it's all about. It's about roster efficiency at backup spots. Backups have to be able to play multiple positions. And right now, the 49ers are a little too specialized with Pryor only working on the right and Jalen Moore. He could work on both sides, but the 49ers have expressed their displeasure with him. John Feliciano is a good example. He can play center. He can play left guard. He can play right guard. Gives the 49ers the benefit of potentially not using a roster spot on Nick Zakelj. I know they like Zakelj. I know that he's a prospect that they have always expected to have some developmental runway. But if they can sneak him through to the practice squad, the 49ers will be in a lot better position. Defensive line. T.Y. McGill's got $400,000 of guaranteed money on his deal. If you're in a crowded cap situation, that kind of stuff is significant. That's why I think, I've been talking a little bit about Marlon Davidson, but I've always also been talking about T.Y. McGill. That's why I think that T.Y. McGill might have a 53-man roster edge over Marlon Davidson, because Davidson doesn't have any guaranteed money on the deal. T.Y. McGill does. It's easier and actually possible to cut Davidson without any penalty and then re-sign him to the practice squad if he agrees to do that. So when I look at the defensive line, I think T.Y. McGill is the 10th defensive lineman. If the 49ers do take 10, I think the top 8 are obvious. We're obviously still working for Bosa. And hey, the top 9 are obvious because they really like Kerry Hyder. Then the question is, do they take 6 linebackers? Because even if you take 6 and you don't trade anybody, and hey, it's possible they trade a surplus at linebacker, somebody like Marcelino McCrary-Ball, D. Winters, or Jalen Graham has to be on the outside of the picture. Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles is going to make this team. That's my prediction right now. You talk about dead money. You talk about how much the 49ers have committed to these players. The biggest clue with Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles is the 49ers have $1.25 million in dead money waiting if they do cut him. He's been their number 3 linebacker in a lot of these practices. He's a special teams ace. The 49ers paid him some guaranteed money to reward him for being a special teams ace and a 4th linebacker in prior years. Maybe DFF wins that 3rd linebacker job now. Maybe that makes Oren Burks expendable. But as of right now, the 49ers have 6 in the room, and I don't see how they don't carry 6 because all of these guys are capable. You can't just give up a solid body at linebacker. D. Winters and Jalen Graham have been putting in good work for the 49ers this offseason. Moving forward to the secondary, I do think they'll be able to sneak Deshaun Jameson onto the practice squad, but let's see what happens tonight. If he electrifies tonight, if he has a pick 6 and he starts making plays in the punt and kick return games, all of a sudden you might have to reconsider if you're the 49ers. The only reason I may have him on the practice squad is because spots are so limited. Mooney Ward, lock. Ambry Thomas, lock. Samuel Womack, lock. Lenore, lock. Hufanga, lock. Gibson, lock. Jair Brown, lock. George Odom, your NFL leader in special teams tackles last year, he's a lock. Isaiah Oliver, maybe not as much of a lock, but the 49ers did give him a vote of confidence as far as covering tight ends the other day. So we shall see. Anyway, that is a crowded DB room, but it's a crowded roster. And as you can see through the counter here, we're at 53. That means that somebody like Deshaun Jameson, who's your top option for the 49ers in that reserve cornerback spot, the undrafted rookie out of Texas, might have to start this preseason on the practice squad. Now, the problem is, would he get claimed? Because he's done some good stuff, but he's also done some bad stuff. He muffed a punt last week. And when you muff a punt, well, it doesn't look good. And the 49ers definitely need versatility at back-end roster spots. They need somebody who can return punts. Jameson did fine in college, but it was a little bit more of a struggle, his first chance at the NFL level. Darrell Luter Jr., 5th-round draft pick this year. He's still on PUP. I predict the 49ers will keep him there, so that way he doesn't have to take up a roster spot because you can see how crowded this already is. He might be healthy, but the 49ers don't want to take up that roster spot. If Luter starts the season on PUP, he would have to stay on PUP right now, and if that happens, he can come back after 4 weeks and not take up a return from IR designation, because PUP is a different list than IR. As far as other cuts go, if I had to predict this, I think Miles Hartsfield's gone after those missed tackles. I think they like Quantrez for the practice squad. Let's keep an eye on that. Kicker, that's interesting because Jake Moody just strained his quad. Some people are speculating, oh, is this an IR stash for the year? I don't think so. I think they said day-to-day quad strain. They could have been much more mysterious about the injury, but they said day-to-day quad strain. It's unfortunate for Moody because he's trying to build confidence kicking in games. At least Zane Gonzalez, from the 49ers perspective, will now have a chance to showcase his abilities. They might be able to swap a pick for him. But obviously, it's leaving the 49ers a little bit queasy because Moody's been great in practice, but he still has to show that he can translate it to games. He won't be able to do that anymore before the regular season. He got a bit better from week 1 to week 2, but there still is much improvement that Jake Moody needs to make. So that's going to be on display tonight. Zane Gonzalez, potential showcase, Moody out, and then we'll see how this progresses. I don't think that they're planning on the IR designation for Moody to stash him for a year before bringing back Robbie Gould. To me, that seems a little too conspiratorial. Again, Moody's been really good in practice, and the 49ers just think the time will allow him to adapt to NFL adrenaline before the game. All right. Game tonight. I wanted to give you guys the quick 53-man outlook, 49ers Chargers preview. Thanks for everything. Hit that sub button. Hit the little alarm bell to notify you when I come on, because we've got a lot of great 49ers content still on the way. Everybody have a great Friday. We'll talk to you very soon.